Hello everyone, I'm Sarah Spencer, and today in this video we are going to be talking about a quick overview of cell transport. So this is the main idea of cell transport, of basically molecules going across the cell membrane in order for the cell to gain whatever it needs to maintain equilibrium or to maintain homeostasis. To kind of go back over a few things too, we need to talk about the cell membrane, since the cell transport is always talking about molecules going across the cell membrane to either go inside the cell or outside the cell. So, again, our cell membrane is made up of many parts other than just phospholipids. You do have the phospholipid bilayer, but part of our fluid mosaic model is that there are some proteins, carbohydrates, and steroids that basically help the cell membrane figure out what molecules to allow inside the cell or outside the cell. Here you have protein channels, and that's going to help with large molecules to go across the membrane. Otherwise, because of the way the phospholipids are arranged, the tails are hydrophobic, so usually only your hydrophobic molecules will pass straight through the phospholipids to the other side. So small molecules or hydrophobic molecules are the ones that go straight across. Otherwise, large hydrophilic molecules or polar molecules, if they are pretty large, they're not going to be able to transport straight across the membrane. They are going to need the help of a protein channel. All right, so we are going to be looking at molecules moving in and out of the cell with our cell transport. So right here, this is the cell. This is representing what is inside the cell, and this is going to be outside the cell. All right, so you guys are going to be adding this to your notes. We are first going to be talking about passive transport. So there's two types of cell transport. There's passive and there's active. Passive transport, kind of as the name implies, passive is very passive. It does not require any energy. It's going to go with the flow. One way I like to remember passive transport is passive transport if you are, let's say, floating down the river in a tube. You're just kicking your feet up and you're just going down the stream. You're going with the flow, you're going with the stream. Does not require inner energy. You are just laying there quite content, actually. And that is what passive transport is. No energy is required at all. It goes with the flow, which means we're going from area of high concentration molecules to area of low concentration molecules. So if there's a high concentration molecules outside the cell and a low inside, that high concentration is going to go across the membrane into the inside until equilibrium is reached. So passive transport is all about maintaining equilibrium. So you want about the same amount of molecules inside and outside the cell, or as much of the same amount. So equilibrium, equal as much as possible. This is going to bring us to our first type of passive transport, and that is diffusion. So diffusion is where you have your small hydrophobic molecules that will go straight across the membrane. Things like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and other types of lipids as well. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 small molecules outside the cell, and there's 2 molecules inside. Passive transport, we want equilibrium. So this cell's going to go across, this cell's going to go across. So basically, the molecules are going to go inside the cell until we have an equal amount in and out, until equilibrium is reached. So that is passive transport. Molecules are going to go inside. Well, this is going to bring us to facilitated diffusion. So facilitated diffusion, this is where large molecules are going to go across the membrane. These are going to include things like your carbohydrates and your lipids. Now, since these are large molecules, it does need the help of a protein channel. So these molecules do not just cross straight across the membrane like we did in diffusion. So facilitated diffusion is diffusion, but it's facilitated with the protein channel. All right, so if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 molecules inside the cell and we have 3 molecules outside the cell, we're going to try to figure out which direction these molecules are going to flow. Again, it's going to go high concentration to low concentration, going with the flow till equilibrium is reached, so molecules are going to leave the cell. This is going to bring us to our last type of passive transport, and that is osmosis. So osmosis is diffusion, but it's only dealing with water molecules, period. Water molecules, most of the time, they do require a protein channel. Now, really cool thing about water molecules is even though water is technically hydrophilic and the fatty acid tails don't really like it, technically they are small enough and they are fast enough to go straight across the membrane as well. But most of the time, they do require the use of a protein channel called an aquaporin. Not that you'll ever need to know it's called an aquaporin, but there you are. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 water molecules outside the cell and 1, 2 water molecules inside the cell. So that means our water is going to flow into the cell until equilibrium is reached, and you have 3 and 3. This is going to bring us to active transport. So active transport, this, since kind of like as the name implies, it is active, which means we do need energy or ATP in order for this to work. So like again, the analogy of floating down the river, in passive transport, we just float down the river. Our feet are up in the tube, and we're just letting the river take us. Well, active transport is the exact opposite. We're in our tube, but we want to go against the flow. We are going to go upstream. So instead, we're going to use energy and we're going to go upstream in our tube. It's going to take a lot of energy to do that. So active transport goes against the flow, which means we're going from area of low concentration molecules to area of high. There are, again, 3 types of active transport we talk about, and again, they do require ATP. First one we're looking at are protein pumps. Protein pumps are basically any type of molecule or even ions that are going to cross the membrane. So let's say the cell made this molecule and it really does not need it. It wants to maintain homeostasis instead of equilibrium. So active transport is all about homeostasis more so than equilibrium. So the cell made this molecule, it does not want it at all. It needs it out. What it does is it's going to bind an ATP to the protein channel, and this protein channel is going to pump the molecule outside the cell. So that is protein pumps or active transport. Now there's 2 other types of active transport as well that we can see here. First one we have is exocytosis. So exo means outside, cyto means cell. So this is a bulk transport of materials outside the cell. Again, ATP is used, and it's going to take these molecules that the cell no longer needs, and it's going to pump them outside the cell like so. And it does so using vesicles or vacuoles to pump the excess material that the cell made outside the cell. Well, there's the opposite as well. Let's say the cell needs more molecules. Let's say it needs a lot more protein. That is when endocytosis is going to occur. Endo means inside, cyto cell. So this is a bulk transport of materials into the cell. So the cell really wants these proteins and it's going to force it across the membrane, again, utilizing ATP or energy. So kind of wrapping all this up together, passive transport, no energy is required at all, and we're trying to maintain equilibrium. So passive transport is all about that equilibrium. We want the same amount of molecules in and outside the cell. Molecules are going to move from area of high concentration of molecules to area of low. So again, we're trying to have the same number of molecules in and out of the cell. There's 3 types of passive transport. We have diffusion. This is where small hydrophobic molecules cross the cell membrane. Facilitate diffusion is large molecules crossing the membrane. And osmosis, this is water molecules going across the membrane. So diffusion, facilitate diffusion, osmosis. Facilitated diffusion and osmosis, these ones typically do require some sort of protein channel for the most part. Diffusion does not need a protein channel at all. These are small molecules. They go straight across those fatty acid tails. All right, this is going to bring us to active transport. Active transport energy is required to maintain homeostasis of the cell. These molecules are going to move from area of low molecule concentration to area of high concentration. So again, active transport is all about homeostasis. This is so the cell maintains its equilibrium or its balance not necessarily the same amount of molecules in and out of the cell. So if the cell really does not want a certain molecule, it's going to pump it out. If it really needs more because they know some sort of process is going to occur, it's going to pump a whole bunch in. So there's three main types of active transport. The first one is protein pumps. ATP will bind to a protein channel and pumps the molecules against a gradient, either in or out of the cell. Endocytosis, again, endo inside, cytocell, material goes inside the cell. Exocytosis, exo is outside, cytocell, so molecules go outside the cell.